It's lovely to see you all. Just also, if you're screened out, if like me, you spend a lot of your time on screen these days, you can pretend this is Radio 4 or let's say 3, let's be ambitious. And it's a deluxe edition of The Verbal Poetry Please or something like that. And just go on mute, turn your camera off, lie down somewhere, just rest. Just do whatever suits you. Don't feel constrained, because we will be sharing screens and so on there. So just relax and enjoy it. So first of all, Andrew McMillan, and Andrew's just released another fantabulous collection called Pandemonium, which I read, and it's sort of taken my breath away about 2 weeks ago. I'm still waiting to draw breath really from reading it. Many congratulations, Andrew, on that. Another poetry in all its honesty. Andrew's also, however, and the reason he's here really is a fantastic friend to Shrewsbury Poetry, and there are lots of Shrewsbury Poetry people here tonight. He's also a fantastic friend to me. He's been an inspiration and guide. It's a genuine generational reverse going on here. I look up to you enormously, Andrew, and feel privileged to consider you a friend as well. And you've written lovely words on the back of the pamphlet, so it makes absolute sense for you to start. So please welcome Andrew McMillan.
Thank you so much, Liz, and it's an honour to be here to launch this astonishing book. And I'm going to say more about it later on, because I get to introduce you as well, which is really lovely. I'm just going to read 3 little poems. The theme generally, obviously, is music, and we know that from that introduction that we got from that brilliant music of John Tiz. I'm slightly what is the word? Not Luddite. I'm not that great on music. I'm going to do my best to kind of provide us with some variously music-themed work to start us off. And so this first one I chose from Physical just because it takes its title from an ABBA song. And that's like the limit, that's the level of my musical insight tonight, I think. And so this poem is just called If It Wasn't for the Nights. I tour my foreign voice through the tin-roofed halls of semi-rural provinces. I barely understand the lines, but the crowd goes mad, and claps of thunder thrum the valley where I sleep. My lonely haircut cellist eyes the bar between us, and I gargle salt and sleep alone. And back across the border, the man I love is curled to someone else, and they don't speak a word. And outside, a precious bird doesn't comprehend the language of its wings, and frost hums on the weather vane. If it wasn't for the nights, Stefan, I'd come home. And this next one is just from the new book Pandemonium. Sometimes out dancing in a club, you'll start crying. Say this place is new, you don't recognize it, and you're not safe here. It's as though you've swum back to the surface of your body and found yourself scared of the many-headed animal of the drunken crowd, its growl of bass, its sweat of alcohol and piss. Sexton says suicides have a special language. They only ever ask what tools. Daily, you go looking for the instruments of your undoing, eyeing up the trees which could take your weight, looking up the effects of drinking weed killer. And the music keeps getting louder, even with your hands like headphones on your ears, your face pounding the pillow, the duvet with one long flourish of the arm pulled over you. And I'll just read one final poem that isn't anything at all to do with music, but is the one from the poem in physical that is dedicated to Liz, and is named for her, really. And as Liz was saying, it's, you know, one of the only reason I always think really for any art is for music or for poetry is for the people that you meet whilst being involved in that community. And Liz has been such an important person in my life for a long time now, and it's been a shame that we haven't been able to see each other because of this last couple of years, but I'm hoping that will change soon and that I can get back in her car where her driving style we might describe as idiosyncratic. And this is a poem that I guess speaks to that, dedicated to Liz from the first book. It's just called "The Fact We Almost Killed a Badger is Incidental." What? The way it flashed its rump to the headlights at the edge of the carriageway, the way the muscles churned under the flesh that seemed grey in the dusk, the way you knew it was a badger even though we couldn't see the markings, the way it missed the wheel by inches, that the near miss, the black and white flight of the beast into the wood seemed such a moment of freedom that I went home and ended things with you. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not superstitious. If we'd tattooed the road with the fur and the life of it, if we'd flattened it, I still could not have sat through one more night of silence. The fact we almost killed a badger is incidental. Anyway, we were going too fast to have stopped. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. There's lots of clapping going on in that Zoom way that we can't hear. And that poem does bring back that journey from, I think we were near Bridgenorth or near Much Wenlock, and we were driving back to Shrewsbury. And I think idiosyncratic driving might be the way it's going for me in future. Thank you so much, Andrew. And yeah, I hope we can see each other in person soon. Another huge friend of Shrewsbury Poetry is Jonathan Edwards, and Jonathan came to our notice in the poetry world through My Family and Other Superheroes, which is a collection I still absolutely love and treasure and makes me smile every time. And Jonathan, you've been kind enough to come and read in Shrewsbury, I think it's 3 times. And it just felt absolutely right that you should be here tonight. And one of those times I read some of the poems from the pamphlet, and I think it was your response and publishing 3 of them in Poetry Wales that actually made me believe even that I should get the pamphlet published and out there. So I'm really grateful to you for that. So please give a big hand to Jonathan Edwards.
Hiya, Liz. Thanks so much. It's really lovely to be here, and huge congratulations on the publication of Great Master Small Boy. Just as you described, I mean, the first time I heard you read those poems in Shrewsbury, I just thought they were phenomenal poems about music, but also just the most wonderful poems of motherhood and the relationship with a son. They're just wonderful familial poems, just deeply moving. And it's just fantastic to see that they'll be out there and that people will have the pleasure of reading them. So just warm congratulations. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here to help you launch your book. I'm going to read just 2 poems, one family poem and one music poem, although I'm probably stretching the definitions of music. I'll explain a bit more about that later. But this is a family poem. It's called My Family in a Human Pyramid. My uncle starts it, kneeling in his garden. My mother gives a leg up to my gran. When it's my turn to climb, I get a grip of my Bamps minus belt, my cousin's heels, say thank you for a birthday card as I go, then bounce on my nan's perm and skip 3 rows, land on my father's shoulders. He grabs my ankles, half holding me up and half holding me close. Here he comes, my godson, Samuel Luke, passed up until he's standing in his nappy on my head. And now to why we're here. Could the Edwardses together reach a height that the youngest one of us could touch a star? Sam reaches out. He points towards the night. The problem with reading old poems is that time doesn't stand still, does it? Even though the poem has. So Samuel Luke is now 20, and he's studying creative writing in Cardiff University. So every time I see him, not only is he younger and better looking than I am, but he's also increasingly a much better poet. So it's kind of annoying on every level. So I have to say things like, in my day, you know, I say that quite a lot, in my day, you know, it's like this. So I'll read a poem about music. I mean, Andrew mentioned ABBA and being a musical Luddite. This is even more of musical Luddites. I was trying to think of the song that would have been playing at around this time in this poem. And I think it was probably Wigfield. I don't know if anyone remembers Wigfield, but that's really scraping the barrel. I mean, when we get to Beethoven, there's going to be a bit of a jump from Wigfield to Beethoven. This poem happens in Abercarn in the mid-90s, in the West End of Abercarn. I feel as though the canon of poetry in English is missing house parties in the West End of Abercarn in the mid-90s, so I'm doing what I can to put that right. House party at Tanya's. The word was passed in maths, in double physics, by boys on street corners, football pitches, behind the teacher's back, between the clack on clack balls around the pool halls. Come Friday nights, nice jeans, we walked the streets in nervous gangs, jabbed cigarettes towards the night, in the universal sign language for look at me, I'm great. Our jackets bulged with all we could get from the corner shop, with our sleight of hand, our sweet talk, our cultivated bum fluff, and our brothers' NUS cards. At home, our fathers opened doors on empty cupboards. We turned the corner, found a terraced house with music pouring from the chimney, ran our hands through our hair, dipped inside, and there was chaos, carnage, every pot plant an ashtray, every ashtray a sick bag, the carpet a dance floor, and the dance floor sticky. Listen, this girl here was leading some boy upstairs by the hand, this boy launching himself a little like a basketball towards a group of girls to see where he would land. To look round at anything was to see bottles, glasses, cans, and through a doorway there, a glimpse, a glance, a boy there, on his tongue, a disc he's swallowing. The music tried to make up by its volume what it lacked in everything. Reader, if you take my hand and step outside with me now, before good sense or homeowners return, before the loss of consciousness, virginity, the bus fare home, my 2 front teeth, there is this moment on this terrace street we can get back to if we both try hard. There is a moment here among the broken streetlights, crook-locked cars, this swirling wind, this being young, and there a massive, endless sky of stars. Thanks so much, Liz. Have a really lovely evening and huge congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much, Jonathan, for a wonderful reading, fantastic choice. And yes, you've taken us right back to that pavement and the stars and all the hopefulness of that moment. Thank you so much. And there is a lot about youth, as you say, and family. And I think that the title of the pamphlet, The Great Master Small Boy, tries to capture the fact that the small boy still carries on living in us, or whether we're or the small girl as we grow older, even in those who are called great. And I find that fascinating. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for all your support and encouragement. It means such a huge amount. And the same will go to Philip, who's our next reader, Philip Gross. When I play this back later and I zoom in on the film, I'll be able to see quite a lot of Philip's books on this shelf back here. That's one thing, because he's written a lot. I mean, you've published lots of books and they are all gems. I love them. And Philip, you have also been so gracious and kind to Shrewsbury Poetry over the years, running workshops, staying overnight in the Premier Inn in order to meet with us the next morning after a reading, and all sorts of hardships, which probably now seem quite exotic in retrospect. So Philip, the other thing I need to say about this pamphlet is that some of the words in it are Philip's. So Philip mentored me for the writing of the sequence, and occasionally would make a quite direct suggestion in a very Philip kind way. And of course, it was always so brilliant that I couldn't do anything other than immediately amalgamate it into my poem. So at least 2% of the words are yours, Philip, and for that I am so grateful. And all the thought you gave me in shaping it, the ordering of the sequence, and making sense really of what I wanted to say. And I owe you a huge debt of gratitude, and it's lovely to have you here this evening. Thank you, Philip.
Philip, can you unmute, please?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Liz. Can I say that any words of mine which found their way into your book became yours on the way in transit because of the way they're handled and woven. Thank you for inviting me to be part of launching your poems, which weave life and music in a lovely way. I'll bring you a piece of music, or at least a reference to music, which is not at all like Beethoven. No apologies, but if Beethoven is all energy and power and striving and foregrounding of big emotions, the Estonian composer Arvo Pärt, well, he feels to me very Estonian, and I can say that because I'm half Estonian. He feels Estonian in a way of containing his feelings. They aren't mild, they're powerful, but they're held. He's one of those composers who seems to be not concerned with self-expression at all, and yet you can hear anything of his and how distinctive. It works by almost repetition, taking a musical idea and working through all its permutations in an almost mathematical way, and on the way to build an enormous calm. And yes, I'm not embarrassed to say the word he'd like, holiness. This steps off from a piece of his called Fratres. That's brothers, as in monks. Let this be the tension, then, of stillness, audibly, the shiver of sensations like the twitch of metal cooling on the surface of the mind, the body still enough to hear its own unstillness. This you might call prayer, a breath, the longest on the surface of the sky. The tensile strings of cirrus wind quiver in the long grass from horizon to horizon, and the wires that slightly differently sag from each pole to each regular pole beside the rail track. This is listening for the turn, The wires alter their tone, birds gathering, bothering, briefly flaked off into flight, each with its momentary hesitation, south. This makes it not a less but more sure thing. This daily, waking to the early dark, one step after the other, shambling into place again inside oneself in the 4 square cloister, the 4 seasons, fratres, in the sound of sandaled feet, a little sore on stone and cold. This is the boat's wake widening behind until it's wider than the bay, the land diminishing. This is the creaking of flight feathers, finding purchase on unwieldy air, somehow together, taking hold. The other poem I'd like to read, which is also from the same book called A Bright Acoustic, which hints that there's quite a lot of sound and music in it. It's about the other part of music that's brought by the audience, and that curious way our culture has of making your involvement in listening audible. I mean, clapping, exactly that thing which, as Liz mentioned, we can't hear each other doing on Zoom. So maybe here it is in the poem instead. This is applause, applause. Why not start from the end, where the edifice of sound and space, acoustics and attention, whatever the concert hall or slack marquee we're in, begins to crumble with a sound like running scree, then crashes, is collapsed by us all, the pillars of the temple, necessary consummation, all together now. Let's bring it clattering down. Almost too obvious, the glory fallout from a brassy climax. More telling that out of a Lied von der Erde, ewig, ewig, or a lark arising out of hearing, long, slow fade. Expectancy. How long before the rainstorm? Ritual thrashing of the flat roofs of the pavement, sparks leaping up to the streetlight, flash flood made with 2 dry palms together, all together. Clapping solo would be pathos or sarcasm. Rather have the silence, filling up to the horizon, meadows full of fallen sky. But we aren't ready for that. That comes later. Now we raise the roof of whatever church or school hall, the caretaker yawning at the door. We bring the house down on our feet now, and uprising in spite of ourselves, victorious, loosing volleys in the air, in the ruins of silence, the rubble of sound. Thank you.
Philip, I'm going to solo clap. What a wonderful, wonderful poem for Zoom. Fun, especially. What a wonderful poem anyway, but just the way you bring applause to life and all that it is and all that we miss about it. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us this evening and your reading. I'm going to hand back to Andrew now. Nadia Kingsley from Fairacre Press isn't able to be with us this evening, so Andrew's kindly stepping in to introduce Great Master Small Boy officially into the world.
Officially, and it's an honour to be able to do so. So I guess there are 2 introductions that I want to do. We all know Liz, but I think oftentimes as a lot of us have spoken about, as we've read, we've encountered her as a generous host, somebody who's often put other people's poetry before her own when she was kind of running Shrewsbury Poetry and things like that. And so it's worthwhile of course, to remind all of us, I think, the winner of the 2011 Roy Fisher Pamphlet Prize, highly commended in the Bridport, winner of the Café Writers Prize in 2016, runner-up for the 2017 Wigtown Poetry Prize as well, chosen by Caroline Duffy to perform during the Shorter Shore series of readings that she did, published incredibly widely, and as we know, a host of great events in Shrewsbury and at Wenlock Poetry Festival. And I've admired Liz's work for a long time, and there's something astonishingly moving about this pamphlet. If you don't have it yet, do buy it as soon as this evening has finished. And John Suchet, no less than the great John Suchet, has said of this collection that they actually maybe appear to be just as much about Vienna as they are about Beethoven, and somehow recognizing that Beethoven was molded by that city. John Suchet writes that Liz is able to avoid the many clichés about Beethoven and succeed in creating a true reflection of him in her poetry. And that's incredibly high praise from somebody who is so kind of steeped, I think, in classical music. I myself said of these poems that I've been lucky enough to sit with as they developed. And I mean this, I think, from my heart, that they're perfectly tuned poems. And they show us, as we'll hear when Liz reads, that a love of music, or love of any art really, is always a journey through family, through memory, through geography, as these poems take us, but towards love. And the thing that sits with me in these poems, the thing that has lasted with me in these poems, is the love of family, the love of travel, and the love of art and music that comes through and is just steeped in these poems. And there's this astonishing dedication at the front that I find incredibly moving. These poems are dedicated to my son, John T. Lefroy Watt, in whose company they came to life. And that notion of poetry coming to life when it's amongst other people. And I can't wait for these poems to come to life now when Liz reads them. So over to you, Liz.
Vienna, 2018. This city's a miniature of empire, a lavish half-continent, heated up, compressed into stone. Here are dozens of palaces, domes, gold eagles, vast cobbled squares centered on monuments to rearing emperors and seated empresses, using the names Holy and Roman without irony. We're here for Beethoven, but it's 30 degrees and the Philharmonic's not playing anything. Music's closed for the summer, or at least limited to men in powdered wigs, Mozart coats, black buckled shoes, grubby stockings. They're handing out leaflets for Vivaldi. I'm hot. Wonder who'd bother to pay to hear the Four Seasons when they're freely available back home, online and on any phone. We opt for Schönberg, walk to Zaunergasse, find the museums shut for alterations. In the gift shop, you read the maths of his scores. We concede, choose a palace at random at the Belvedere, and lucky for us, it's Baroque excessive, a Habsburg two for the price of one, summer and winter residences linked by wide flights of stairs, not gardens, fountains, the cool geometry of imperial design. There are signs to Klimt's kiss. We find two. One, a selfie point copy catering for tourist love. But we're mother and son, so turn away, come across Rodin's bust of Mahler, discover you share his nose, the shape of his chin. You square up for a photograph, match his profile, pose for pose. A guarantee between us. I can't help it. I'm led to Bach's particular cadence and patterned with the meter of Baroque. My ears tuned for sequence and perfection, an expectation that was mother-given, God-given. How Bach was repeated each church week, sung and heard, heard, sung. There was no meaning he did not accommodate. This music's my richest inheritance. I'm grateful I saw my mother at the piano, her hair unpinned, her eyes brilliant with joy. Bach's music sits in me like a torch, and I passed it on to you, which means I became momentarily lost for words the day we were in the car listening to Beethoven, and you handed Bach back, explained, hands flying this way and there over imaginary keys, that faultlessness cannot reach the wilder kind of paradise. I saw you were already yourself, felt your confidence as a blessing. There and then I switched track, toppled Bach a little, promised to help you search for Beethoven. He became a guarantee between us, and I have taken this on gladly, made more space for him and all you're bringing in. (4-4). Halfway through your first piano lesson, you placed your right thumb on middle C and up the scale like a shot you went for the next 11 years. As your mother, I exaggerate, must say you took to it straight off, handling plump crotchets 4 to the bar, as if born with this pulse. You understood the maths of it, how 4 goes into 4 to make the whole fraction of common time, a signature for childhood. One afternoon, we saw a swan unlock his wings in simple beats. Whump, 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 whump. He took to the skies. Before you, 4th of June, 2000. I'm in labour in the bath. I'm a whale, a ship in full sail, beached on the rounded island of myself by 30 odd years and 39 weeks, and your sheer impetus. Your fist, or knee, or elbow prods at the surface. I prod you back. These are the last hours before I'll see you. Come to learn your sex, your starting weight, how your heart will beat in air. I wallow in this human mystery, and you already know me inside out. Beethoven House, Bonn. His home is as his mother might have kept it, tidied up, waiting. House of 1,000 notes and sorrows. He's already left. He'll not be back from Vienna this time, and she's long dead. We find it serious, oil portraits, creaking boards, shuttered windows, facsimile scores behind glass, instruments in cabinets, the hammerklavier locked up. Here's his viola, the worn fingerboard, proof of his touch. Here the greetings cards exchanged with Eleonora, proof of his affection. Here his youthful silhouette, portraits of 2 brothers. We believe in him. But what of the siblings who died in childhood, his mother's grief? Where are his father's downed bottles, the awful debts? Where's rage? Where's joy, Ludwig, great master, small boy? Bonn to Vienna, 9th of July, 2018. The shortest distance between 9 hours is this, a train approaching and, in its middle, carriage 14, and in carriage 14, 2 window seats, the shared table, notebooks. We're leaving Bonn. She has given us her blessing. The day's heading east-southeast with us, making its way along the Rhine, then freewheeling across the continent. We pass through Lutzel, Bingen, Mainz, Würzburg. Sometimes I look out, sometimes I drift through a book or sleep. Regensburg, Passau, Linz. Opposite, you're writing your first language. Crotchets, quavers, bar lines, rests, flats, and sharps. The stuff of your dreams. Rhythm, harmony. Beethoven's apartment, 18A, Pasqualati House, Vienna. "35 years and 67 moves. Beethoven's evading us. We're doing our best to get closer, but he's spread thin in this city, jostling for focus with Schubert, Mozart, all those Strausses, not to mention Freud, Wittgenstein, Schrödinger, and his damned cat. We've traced him, found this apartment set high on the ramparts. On the column of bells for number 18, one's named Beethoven. There's no answer, so we spiral up to the 4th floor, are met at the desk by the scowl of a janitor disturbed from silence. A young apprentice lurks, avoids us as if this is the worst first job he could have chanced upon. We creep from room to room. This is the birthplace of 4 symphonies, the violin concerto, a clutch of quartets, his only opera, Fidelio. From the latticed window we look down. Far below, cars, slow as horse-drawn carriages, flow along the Ringstrasse. Closing the gap on Ludwig van Beethoven. We spend an evening like this. 9, 3, 6, 5, 7, 8, 4, 1, 2. You found your perfect sequence, but I want 7 higher. Suggest 3, 7, 6, 4, 5. You say a symphony cannot survive by its slow movement alone, and we go out to eat, order goulash. While we wait, you search, what was Beethoven's favorite meal? Next day, we board the tram to Heiligenstadt. He lived here in hot summers, taking the waters, seeking cures for deafness, Vienna's crowds, himself. Walking the woods in all weathers, his hair and unbuttoned coat came alive in the wind, head pounding with The Tempest, Prometheus, the 3rd Symphony, and with that unsent letter, the Heiligenstadt Testament. In Probesgasse, you bend to stroke a cat sleeping under a parked car. Beethoven's house has quietened since his brawl with despair. We go in, begin our museum ritual, pay our respects to texts, instruments, manuscripts, objects he may not have touched, till I'm back sore, sit down, pick up headphones. The 7th's playing, and this is the perfect timing. At last, he's near. Testament. O ye men who think or say that I am malevolent, stubborn, or misanthropic, how greatly do ye wrong me. Ludwig van Beethoven, Heiligenstadt Testament, 1802. In a terrifying secret,
cheated of hope. I appeared to live sullen. And yet it was impossible. Noise became the pulse of blood in my head, the shrill whistle of distortion. It was impossible for me to say, "Speak louder, shout." My conversation was reduced to books, to bare minimum requests. I am compelled to isolate myself. And even now, you think me difficult. Hot terror seizes me. I turned to senseless physicians who poured oil into me. They laid on me their ignorance, fettered me to their undiscovered sciences, and I was artist, musician, maker, known for sound. My name already recognized, resonating in wooden instruments and halls. Oh, but I cannot let my condition be observed. The flute played pastoral, the shepherd sang, and I heard nothing, and I would have embraced nothing, but it was art that withheld me, and I had not finished my work. Music persisted in labyrinths like memory. I wrote down its rattle of lines, dots, coils, strung pen strokes out along the staves, which ran through my life like wires.
Jazzland. Harry Stoiker, gypsy swing guitarist, is playing tonight at Vienna's oldest jazz club, Your First. It's cash at the door, standing room only, in a close packed cellar, a crowd that's known what it's about since 1972. We stand at the back. You strip down to your Beethoven t-shirt, drink lemonade. Harry slopes on, all hair, smiles, slim face and brilliant guitar. He's cool beyond casual, knows this work, the bassists, the drummers, his own. Your first jazz club and we've struck lucky. I drink wine, watch you dance about our tiny square of floor, legs and feet and arms. All that matters here is tune and rhythm. Music's between us, stretched and plied like toffee, like smoke, like guitar strings, like flights of starlings, like the roll and fro of your 18 years. I wipe the sweat from this deliberate freedom, loosen up, dance beside you. Harry Stoiker, gypsy swing guitarist, is playing tonight at Vienna's oldest jazz club, Your First. And he breaks off, tells us he's of the Lavara Roma dynasty. By 1945, only 6 of 200 of his family still lived. Harry plays for his father, concentration camp survivor, fan of Frank Sinatra and the liberating US Army. Harry Stoiker plays for peace tonight. He plays for joy, leaves us with his smile, starts something new in you. Thank you.
Brilliant.
So, thank you, Graham. I recognise your voice there. Isn't it wonderful? Graham's learnt how to Zoom in the past year. So that's reading from Great Master Small Boy, but it's not finished yet because the final poem in the book starts the next section of this evening, which is the premiere performance by Shrewsbury Poetry of a piece I've called Music on their behalf. But before I do that, I just wanted to acknowledge everyone who's helped in the making of this book. And I've already said how important Philip and Andrew and Jonathan have been in its creation, and everything is very heartfelt and meant. And you might think, those of you who don't write poetry, how can 30 pages, some of which are blank, of a book take so many people to be involved? But every word is thought about carefully. So I want to thank Nadia in her absence for publishing the pamphlet. Thousands wouldn't do it, but Nadia did, so I'm very grateful to her. I want to thank my son Gabriel, who's just sitting over next to me and waving to the crowd, who designed the cover, which I think is one of the very best things about the book. It's beautiful, and the picture is, if you look carefully at the cover, you will see the name Beethoven in the workings of the piano, and that's because it is a picture of Beethoven's last piano. And the Bonn Museum very kindly took photographs and sent them over the internet till we got one that would work for the cover. So I'm grateful to them as well. And to my brother Jeremy, who put me in touch with a friend at the Bonn Museum. Also to Janet, my sister-in-law, who's let you in this evening and turned on record, because I probably would have forgotten to press the button. And to Pagan, who's here doing screen shares and all sorts of things, which just make it easier for me to enjoy the moment. I want to thank Anne Mason, and the Borders Writing Group. Anne is our person who tells us where to put the commas, and she's a former editor at Cambridge University Press, and what a person to have in your writing group. I thoroughly recommend it. Paul Francis, you're here. Thank you for encouraging me, and also thank you for just being a fantastic friend in this lockdown period. It's just been, you've been well, Paul sends me TV suggestions. What can I say? It's been incredibly important, but also helps me out with my work, and as does Graham. Thank you, Graham, and Carol, two big friends in poetry. And thank you all for coming tonight. I just want to say to the Shrewsbury Poetry people who are about to entrust their poems to my idea, thank you for trusting it, and I really hope it's going to work, and if it doesn't, you're free to blame me entirely. So this piece, I'm going to screen share. I haven't. Sorry, this is what it would have been like if Pagan hadn't been doing all the work behind the scenes. I need to just open the Shrewsbury Poetry file. And then go to that. So the idea of a theme and variations is quite commonly used in music, as I'm sure you know, many of you. Beethoven wrote a few. The Goldberg variations might be one of my favorites, and in a sense this is like the Goldberg variations, I hardly dare say it, by Bach, in the sense that it starts with a theme a poem which comes at the end of this collection called Coda. And then we go through other movements, other people's poems, and then we come back to Coda at the end. So when you hear Coda again, just as with the Goldberg variations, when you hear the opening theme at the end, you know that we've reached the end of the evening. So, music, variation on a theme in 13 voices by Shrewsbury Poetry. Coda. This is the peculiar alchemy, to be caught up in someone else's song, be drawn over strings or hammered out, plucked as a guitar or blown across a flute. It's a hollowed space, a refuge, place of hope which shows us all our losses. It's where I go when I exhaust the words for love and sorrow. It's music.
School run and stormcock. 40 hours of rain have made roads burns. The tarmac beads and ripples under snatching tires. Each gateway leaks a sea to swell from verge to verge. Our headlights drown in batting tides. Windscreen wipers slash on double. Downpouring rain on rain has melded earth and vapour. Now the brown nith slipstreams over the flood banks and levels the fields with its metal. And I don't dare brake, but think about the children, dropper gear. Here on the brig, the head roar of the Cluden's drum, a white-ripped force that thirsts for the narrow arch and boiling carves boulders into cups. I compensate this lurching gale and hold the small road's crown for home, where a thrush sings from the holly, makes his song against the brimming clouds, makes the woods keep silent while he sings.
Listen. The wind drives in a soft irregularity of rain against the window across the Goldberg variations. Their weave comes alive. In tune and in time we are, side by side on the floor, in the dark.
Punk spirit. It was 72 when the Starman lit the way, and I was still flapping into school on half-mast flares, red-faced and ridiculous rounded collars, ashamed by teenage cares. But we could still see further than any hippie teacher could on our 6-inch platform heels. We were rebel, high on rhythm, clutching silver wraps, and on the road to Wigan, always dancing to a different tune. And I was tripping through the speed freak 70s, a cracked actor, a lad insane. Then Rotten showed us how not to give a shit. Sid was never really vicious, but taught us how to sneer. And I was heading for the fall, searching for a room to live. Fiery Jack, up from hell once in a while. And Patty felt it to her core. She didn't shave her armpits for Easter. She was horses, horses, horses. And the slits were never typical girls. It was permanent for Ian Curtis, and it was permanent for me. Even in these grown-up years, I've fed off punk philosophy, not the empty nihilism of smash it up and burn it down, but never mind the bollocks. No one knows what's going on. So fill your heart with love today. Go shout and sing and dance. Beneath the pavement lies the beach. Stake your claim and fill it. Old punks never really die. They just become punk spirit. Yeah.
Impressions on Ralph Vaughan Williams' Fantasia on a Theme by Thomas Tallis. How else to be, what else to pray? Order music out of deep peace, whatever makes us feel the pulse, to sing out our various glorious, inglorious, ennobled ways. Bursting arches, Gothic fervour, man made for heaven, preached and painted generations forever bound. Ostentatious parish priests, plain, humble chapels draw down their ranting ministry. Fill up silence, order, colour. Then within its music, we might hear resound curled stone, timber, plastered walls, lighted glass splinters psalmody lacerate our moods. Then leave us all those quiescent moments, decorate space in scent and sound. Why not? Why? Capture and so convert it all. Pray in finite pleasure's mortal peace. What else to say? How else to try?
Legacy, for John Prine, country singer who died last year. This guy is so good, we might just break his thumbs. Christopherson, Chicago, 71, giving a break to young John Prine. He comes on stage and sings about Sam Stone, the hole in daddy's arm, that's where the money goes. Cue 50 years of songs, hopes and regrets, the goofy jokes, the fantasy, the soul. An angel from Montgomery, celebrate the low-key life, the woman who gets by. Fame's fickle, money varies, but he knows good singers love his work. Play those duets. Iris Dement, Lucinda, Bonnie Raitt. The speed of the sound of loneliness has gone, but we'll still have the songs, and they won't die.
The schoolhouse in Allaheath. These walls house many voices, hold songs and warmth and poems warm within the stones. When the wind blows along from the Atlantic, you'll sometimes hear the ghosts who walk beside us, but tonight it is the sun that draws us in. There she stands in the light from the window, brown skin and silver hair, framed by midsummer sun. Has she come from Ithaca, heard ancient tales of innocence and loss, and come back to sing them to us, another island race? Her song beats with an ancient rhythm. It is the song of Aboriginal streets, of narrow houses and evening shadow, a sacred ground that echoes with the cries of children, the footfalls of the lost. There she stands in the light from the window, brown skin and silver hair, framed by midsummer sun. It's a special night for poets. We should have known this longest night of summer. She is a Selkie come to sing among us.
Music, music, music. The composer sits at the edge of his desk writing notes onto the page. It is a mystery to me, tone deaf. I fling myself into the words. She dips her toes into the music and paddles out into the ocean. She sees manatees and shellfish and gets engulfed by the depths. She is washed by it, head set, delighting in every sound. When we were washed up on the shore together, she provided the soundtrack to our lives. I offered the occasional wrong note. She's a conch shell, a delight, a song for the birds. She's the crescendo to my words. A mermaid. She is the snow globe to my world.
Bob Marley, Stevie Nicks, and a Staffordshire agricultural showground. Before the corporate spaces that came initialed NEC, O2, Bet 365, bands and musicians too big for their Cuban boots and town halls would sort out cabinet spaces to ply their trades. For me, Leicester Roller Skating Rink, Leeds University Cafeteria, and round here, New Bingley Hall Agricultural Showground. So between dairy shows and county fairs, Fleetwood Mac trailered in their California magic, which sadly dissipated in this cattle market, bass and drums echoing the agricultural hangar. My dream woman, Stevie Nicks, disappeared into a Midlands indoor oral vacuum. And down my top 10, Rosette taken back, despite a change of shawls and headbands. Bob Marley played here twice. First with a whiff of horse muck in the air, strange sweet smells to rhythm so heavy, the concrete pillars managed to bounce to the beat without breaking, while the pointed elbows of the crazy white guy in front of me danced out of time with both the music and the beams. The second time he played, Bob Marley was ill, looked like his own ghost. We sensed he wasn't well. The car park emptied quietly. We followed each other out as orderly as sheep.
How many jokes does it take to make a viola player? You're 11 and so wise. You choose the instrument, which is the passport to the music you already love. Play the viola, you say, and I will never be unwanted. Of course, you'll turn out to be right. You take all the jokes on the chin, especially ones made after you left it on the bus. It turned up 6 weeks later. And how do you prevent a violin from being stolen? Carry it in a viola case. You have a desk to yourself in the school orchestra, sought out by quartets grateful that anyone has opted to play this outsized violin. And how is it different from a violin? It burns longer, holds more beer, cannot be tuned. You believe life exists in piano keys, in 6 strings of a guitar, in a tenor sax, in the curved and polished wood of your viola.
La, la, la. I want my poems to be like Kylie, perfect parcels of song and sensuality, legging it down the page with the kick and push of a band on cue, an audience thumped up on love. I want my poems to be like Kylie, metaphor cute and image pert, a dress change in every verse. I want the years of soaked up similes to strut their time-served breeding, cavort conceits like burdens of love. I want them to swoon their words, give just enough without letting go, put up and put down, made up and made over, with clever teeth and eyes that love. I want my poems to be like Kylie.
Nesting. That day was one for sorrow. Your nest, carefully concealed, deep in dense honeysuckle bower. I never knew you were there, but the magpies did. They've been watching you, their beady eyes noting your frequent visits to and fro. They took your young, every single one. Your shed roof requiem, a simple service, delivered to a Twi'lek congregation, shared your grief. We try to defend our loved ones. We try to defend our nests, protect our loved ones from those that trespass against us, and sometimes we fail. That day was one for sorrow.
Psalm for musicians. Praise to musicians who set up in small rooms, who travel with playlist and guitar case and hope for venues that hum with expectation. Praise to the weary dad roadies who wear pride on their sleeves, for this is the life they once wished for themselves. Praise to damp corner pubs empty at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday evening, to sauce bottles still on tables, to barmen who say, "Are you the music? You can set up anywhere. It's normally busier than this." Praise to the couple just finishing their drinks who stay because it would be rude to leave, to amps, cables and speakers, to obsessive tuning. Praise to the songs unheard over chatter from the bar, to "This one's for Melanie in the corner," to feedback and the valiant first to clap, to requests, duff notes and laughter. Praise to all musicians who stand up and sing it anyway and have no concern for who is listening or why.
Industrial Relations, Wakefield, 1979, Part 2, Rehabilitation. Pumping jelly into pork pies, you were always singing songs from before you went down. How do you do what you do to me? I wish I knew. When we crossed to your line and watched you inject a pie crust, we wondered. One time, Lisa came straight out with it. That bloke what you axed, were his brains like that? You just turned up your smile and sang. If I knew how you do it to me, I'd do it to you.
Coda. This is the peculiar alchemy, to be caught up in someone else's song, be drawn over strings, or hammered out, plucked as a guitar, or blown across the flute. It's a hollowed space, a refuge, place of hope which shows us all our losses. It's where I go when I exhaust the words for love and sorrow. It's music. So I'm going to ask you all to unmute and create Phillips and other people who've mentioned pattering rain and all sorts of things that sound like applause. Let's see if we can create a musical soundscape. So this is the moment where we all need to go get a drink and start chatting and mingling, and this is the bit we can't really do that. I just want to say, Jonty, are you still here? I know we had a potential charger problem, so he might not be here, but of course in some ways the whole evening would not have happened without Jonty and his love of music, which I like to think as a continuation of what I experienced through my mother. And so big thanks to Jonty for the music, for the way that Testament poem and his string quartet matched up really surprised both of us. We just tried it out and it worked. We wrote them independently and they seemed to dovetail together. So that was a real joy for me in preparing for this evening. So thank you everyone for coming. It just remains me to thank Andrew, Jonathan and Philip and Shrewsbury Poetry again for reading with me and for launching Great Master Small Boy, as one of my friends referred in her email to me, my youngest. So I'm very delighted to have had your company in bringing it into the world. Thank you. And one more round of applause and good night, I think.
Thank you, Liz.
Brilliant.
Night, night.
Fabulous.
Mm.